My name is Janine Santoro, my pronouns are she, her, and I currently serve as the Director of Equity and Inclusion for the City of Bethlehem, and your moderator for today's panel. Thank you all for coming. For friends that might only be listening to this panel, I'm wearing a white and green coral floral patterned shirt and gray pants. I have short, medium-length brown hair and brown eyes, and a medium skin tone. Our panelists today are sitting in a row in front of the room, all of whom you'll meet in a few moments, and joining us online. Before we get started, I just want to bring a few things to your attention today that you might have seen in your emails yesterday as you registered. Today, there will be American Sign Language interpretation provided by the United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley and Lehigh Valley Center for Independent Living. There will also be live captioning through Zoom, as you can see on the screen. We also have sensory kits provided by Lehigh University Art Galleries in the back, a reserved cubicle for quiet relaxation space provided by Bethlehem Area Public Library upon exiting the room to your left, and a standard wheelchair by the circulation desk provided by the City of Bethlehem. You'll also see tables around the perimeter in the back with resources from panelists and supporting organizations, which include United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley, Lehigh University Art Galleries, Lehigh Valley Center for Independent Living, Queer and Trans Lehigh Valley, Spellers Empowering Education for Nonspeakers, Laughing at My Nightmare Inc., the Bethlehem Health Bureau, and the Bethlehem Police Department. You will also see books from Robin Beau and Shane and Hannah Burcaw available for checkout, and the art of Michael Freeman, which we hope you can enjoy. Your programs also have the websites, which include many more resources from each of our organizations, and we encourage you to check them out. As an additional human resource, I want to ask my friend and colleague Sean Ziller to stand up. Sean is the city's ADA coordinator, and so if you're ever planning to come to a city meeting or program and have questions about accommodations or accessibility, you can meet him and get his information here today. Thank you, Sean, for being here. While there are paper programs available at the front on the table back there, you can also find the program access through QR code, which can be adjusted to large print. And there are bathrooms right here in this room on your right-hand side, if you need to use the bathroom, or you can go upstairs by the elevator right across from the hall for additional bathrooms. Additionally, the city would like to thank a few people here for their existing work and community conversations that have inspired this event in particular. So when you hear your name, please rise if you're able so you can be recognized. Also, in lieu of applause, which might be jarring for some folks, we encourage you to snap like this in recognition of the work for these wonderful partners. Mary Wright and Lisa Jordan, can you please rise if you're able? Mary Wright and Lisa Jordan are from Touchstone Theater, who hosted a number of engaging events around last year's festival in Bound, and they did a lot of programming around finding community, including a big read event which was here at the library around accessibility, housing, and accommodations. Thank you for your work. We also thank Robin Beau, who also facilitated a book discussion that was part of the Big Read series of Rebecca Kostick's Sitting Pretty, The View from My Ordinary Resilient Disabled Body. And Austin Duncan, I'm not sure if he's here. I want to honor him too, and his colleague Christina Zhang. Austin Duncan is a professor of disability and dependence focused on the role that social networks make up in the lives of individuals with invisible disabilities. And Christina Zhang, who couldn't be here because she's traveling, is a designer and educator who works and teaches at the intersection of architecture and social justice. And she's currently conducting community mapping workshops to discover barriers and joys in Bethlehem, so one day we can implement positive changes that reflect the experiences and insights of our disabled community. We thank you all so much for the work that you've done and that you're going to continue to do. The Americans with Disabilities Act was first signed into law by President George H.W. Bush on July 26, 1990, with the purpose of prohibiting discrimination against people with disabilities. While Disability Pride initially started as a day of celebration that year, the first official celebration of Disability Pride Month occurred in July 2015, which also marked the 25th anniversary of the ADA. Now, 10 years later, we thought it was about time to celebrate here at the library and on Payrow Plaza. And so to kick off today's program, I want to welcome the person who really recognized the need to commemorate 35 years of existence of the ADA, someone who really examines all of our city's efforts through an equity lens, Mayor J. William Reynolds.
Thank you, Janine. And I just want to welcome everybody here today. When Janine and I had this idea, we really wanted to be the first of what we hope will be something that we do every year. And it's a conversation that we have as a community, both about what those physical barriers are, what are the barriers that we don't see, that the city needs to work on, but also a larger conversation about philosophically, like, how are we building things for people? How are we defining success? And how do we keep moving towards that space where we recognize that sometimes we need to do things for people other than ourselves? Janine talked that this is the 35th anniversary of the signing of the ADA. What she didn't mention was, I looked it up this morning, I didn't remember this, it passed the House 377-28, and it passed the Senate 91-6. Like, nobody at that time was arguing. It's a nonpartisan thing. It's a nonpartisan idea that we need to give people what they need to be successful. I used to teach. I use this example all the time. I would never let some kid that couldn't see sit in the back of the room and be like, you just figure it out yourself. That's like my responsibility to be self-reflective about what my classroom is. But I would end by saying, this is not Janine's event or my event, it's our event. And we really want it to be something year after year that we can come back and in different ways examine both the progress we've made, but also the barriers that we maybe don't know or haven't noticed, or the work that we need to undertake as a community to be able to build a community that is open for everybody and that people have an opportunity to be successful. So with that being said, I really appreciate everybody coming here, all of the partners, and we are excited for this to be the first of what is hopefully a new tradition here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And now to introduce the people that really make this event possible. We literally could not do this without you. I'm going to start on screen with our friends. We're so excited and honored you could join us today with Shane and Hannah Burcaw. So Shane Burcaw and Hannah Burcaw are a dynamic duo known for their popular YouTube channels, Squirmy and Grubs, where they share their relationship as an interracial couple with honesty and humor. Shane, who lives with spinal muscular atrophy, is an author and speaker using his platform to break down barriers and challenge perceptions about disability. Together, they built a community of millions who connect with their authenticity and advocacy efforts. Thank you, Shane and Hannah.
Yeah.
To my left, we have Ashley Patete. Ashley is the accessibility coordinator for Lehigh Valley Center for Independent Living. She has worked in the field of special education and adaptive recreation for almost 20 years. She has taught students from early intervention, age birth through 5, through early adulthood, and assisted with selection and use of AT from low-tech adaptations to high-tech communication devices. Ashley has a passion for breaking down barriers to accessibility in all settings through her work with Access Check. She believes accessibility should be built into planning and promotes the idea of universal design so all people can participate fully. Thank you, Ashley. Next, we have Brenda Solitario. She is a special education coordinator for the Bethlehem Area School District, bringing over 30 years of dedicated service to the field of education. With deep expertise in reading intervention and academic development, she has led the design and implementation of inclusive, impactful programs that support learners across grade levels. Brenda is also highly regarded for her work in transition planning, helping students navigate the critical shift from high school to post-secondary pathways. Certified in educational administration and special education and trained in executive coaching, she is committed to advancing educator capacity and student success. Brenda holds a master's in educational leadership from Penn State University and a Bachelor of Science degree in special education from Marywood University. Thank you, Brenda. Next, we have Robin Gao. Robin is an autistic trans poet and educator. Robin has trained organizations across the country on LGBTQIA2+ inclusion and equity, and neurodiversity and disability justice topics, such as local nonprofits, healthcare networks, and at national conferences like the Philly Trans Wellness Conference and Youth Rise Up Conference. It is a founding organizer of Queer and Trans Lehigh Valley, development coordinator at Eastern PA Trans Equity Project, and a facilitator of Radiant, a neurodivergent LGBTQIA2+ group. He serves on the board of Basement Poetry. Thank you, Robin, for joining us. Next, we have Rain Black. Rain is a two-spirit watercolor artist and forager who earned his bachelor's degrees in biology, public health, and art from Cedar Crest College. He holds a Master of Public Health degree in epidemiology from the University of South Florida. He's a professional forager and community educator, teaching about art, native plants, and ecology. Additionally, he does advocacy and education around Indigenous topics, domestic and intimate partner abuse, disability, queer and transgender justice, and public health. He's a founding organizer of Queer and Trans Lehigh Valley and serves on the board of Basement Poetry and the Widow Tocton Center for Native Knowledge. Thank you, Roin, for joining us. Colleen Dorsey is the owner of Biddy and Beau's Coffee in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, obviously, and franchise dedicated to providing employment opportunities for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. As a mother of two, including a daughter with Down syndrome, Colleen has long been active in advocacy and community support through organizations like Special Olympics Pennsylvania and the Miracle League of the Lehigh Valley. She brings a strong technical background to her work, holding a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Villanova University and a master's in computer engineering. Before opening the coffee shop, she served as the director of IT global infrastructure at a leading semiconductor company. Colleen is passionate about building inclusive communities and using business as a force for good. Thank you, Colleen. And last but certainly not least, Michael Freeman is a speaker, mental health advocate, consultant for accessibility and disability, advocate for diversity and inclusion, and legally blind, colorblind, tactile, abstract artist who makes artwork for everyone, especially for those who are blind and have low vision impairment. He teaches art therapy workshops, classes, paint and sip, and spoken word. Michael, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your artwork in the back. We really appreciate it. Thank you. So just some housekeeping. There will be two parts to this panel. Part one will explore each of the personal experiences and professional roles of the panelists in advancing accessibility, with each panelist answering two questions. Part two are two open-ended questions around potential challenges they might face. We ask each panelist to keep responses brief, approximately 2 to 3 minutes per answer. I know it's tough. When you answer the first question, please describe what you are wearing or what you look like for folks that might only be listening to the panel. We're going to start with Shane, up on the screen. Welcome again, Shane. In your book, Strangers Think My Girlfriend Is My Nurse, you talk about middle school being a rough time and that it taught you that you were responsible for making others feel comfortable around your quote-unquote strangeness. Humor has served as a tool to do that. But at the end of your first book, Laughing at My Nightmare, you say, none of us are normal. I have a disease that's causing my muscles to waste away. There are tons of annoying, aggravating, obnoxious, and difficult things about living with spinal muscular atrophy. But you know what? Life is still effing awesome. Every single one of us has problems. That's part of being alive. The beauty begins when you can connect with other people and realize we're all in the same boat. Can you talk about what motivated you to begin telling your story through writing and social media channels, and how humor has helped change perceptions about disability?
Yes, thank you so much. So I am Shane, and I am a white man in my 30s. I have short brown hair and round wire-rimmed glasses. I use a power wheelchair, and today I am wearing a black t-shirt. I began sharing my story because throughout my life, I perceived very clearly that when I met new people, they had a lot of misassumptions and misjudgments about me simply because of my disability, and that made connecting with new people very difficult. We had a lot of obstacles to get over before we could just connect as two people. And so I found out in my life that once I was able to make them feel comfortable with my disability, make them understand my disability, we were able to get past it and begin interacting normally, quote unquote. And so in high school and really in college, I found that by writing about my life, I could reach people easier than meeting a stranger on the street and having to quickly make them feel comfortable with me. I could reach a lot more people by writing my story down and hopefully, reach people that meet people that use wheelchairs and have a little bit more understanding about disability so that they can interact in more fruitful ways. So yeah, I think that humor is a great way to help people approach topics that might otherwise be uncomfortable for them or taboo. Not that disability should be any of those things, but in many ways it still is. And so humor helps break that down. Thank you.
Thanks, Shane. And if you want to learn more about Shane's story, I really encourage you to go get his books in the back, including a children's book you wrote called Not So Different. It's wonderful. So I hope y'all use your library card and check out those books. Thank you. And now Hannah, in Shane's book, Strangers Think My Girlfriend Is My Nurse, there are a number of scenes where people are quick to make assumptions about who you might be in relation to Shane, while also making assumptions about Shane's own abilities. What have you learned as a partner and co-advocate about how ableism operates in public and private spaces, particularly around inter-abled relationships?
Yeah, so first, I'm Hannah. I'm a white woman in my 20s. I have shoulder-length brown hair and I'm wearing a white tank top today. So Shane and I met about 9 years ago, and at that time I didn't have a lot of experience with disability, so I went into our relationship kind of assuming that things were generally accessible and people generally were normal about disability and everything was good. And I very quickly learned that that was not always the case. And on our first date, I remember a woman coming over a diner, so that was shocking to me. But since then, it's happened many more times. So I quickly learned how ableism is in public spaces. I think also with our YouTube channel, we learned the breadth and the depth of ableism because we get comments every single day. A lot of them saying that we must be faking a relationship. And that was something that in public out in the world, no one had ever said that to us. So we get those comments dozens of times a day. So I think we both learned in the past 7 years of creating content how many people have these ideas about disability and how many people have these ableist thoughts. So yeah, I think our work is just trying to teach people the truth and try to improve some of these ideas.
Wonderful, thank you. And we have your brand new book also right here at the library. It just came in yesterday, Inter-Able, so we'll talk about that in just a moment or two. Next, I wanted to ask Ashley, just last month, Lehigh Valley News reported that there was a 22-person contingent from Lehigh Valley Center for Independent Living that visited the Capitol on Advocacy Day. In your opinion, as the accessibility coordinator for LVSIL, what are the biggest accessibility barriers you see in the Lehigh Valley or in Bethlehem in particular? And how is LVSIL working to address them? And what additional support might be needed?
My name is Ashley. I am in my late 30s. I have curly brown hair tied back in a low bun. And I'm wearing a colorful tan, blue, blackish maybe dress. So when we talk about accessibility, there's a lot of different avenues we can take. There's definitely the physical accessibility, which I think is what most people think of when you think of accessibility. So the barriers such as curbs or stairs, we really try to obviously make sure those are eliminated because of the law. In Bethlehem in particular, there are a lot of historic buildings, so those were not designed with accessibility in mind, and there's only so much we can do to address that. Parking for everybody in the Lehigh Valley is a disaster, not to mention the accessible parking. So sometimes we see these really great events, really inclusive, and they are really catering to people with disabilities, but there's no parking. So that completely defeats the purpose. I think we see that more than you would anticipate. There's definitely a lack of accessible transportation for a lot of folks. That's, again, Lehigh Valley and beyond. One of the biggest things that we see right now is the lack of affordable, accessible housing. We're constantly trying to make connections with housing organizations, legislators, landlords, and just try to educate them on the importance of accessible housing. There's also the barriers still, as we talked about already, of negative perceptions. So people feel bad for people with disabilities, think they can't do something, or even don't believe that their disability exists. So we have an access check program where we help identify physical barriers, and we really try to think outside the box with our solutions. We try to focus on things we can change through just different problem solving. We've been very active with advocacy, as Janine mentioned, at the local, state, and federal levels. So we meet with legislators to talk about all these needs, and putting a personal story to it can sometimes really be helpful. Unfortunately, some of the people who are elected have really no concept of how disability affects somebody's life. So sometimes those personal connections can be helpful. We do disability sensitivity trainings, and that helps teach businesses, their new staff, how to interact with people with disabilities. We try to show the positive impact that people with disabilities have on the community through different programs. What's still needed? I think really open minds. So we know there's not enough money. Everybody knows this. But all it really takes is one strong person to see the importance of what we do and see the value in what we do. And that really is a trickle-down effect. I really think that our voices don't necessarily need to be louder, but they do definitely need to be stronger than the opposition.
Thank you. And I think you looked at something really important, which I think none of us really have to do this alone. I think it takes just a good partnership to really get something done, or several partnerships coming together. So thank you for your advocacy and all the work you're doing. Brenda, as a special education coordinator for the Bethlehem Area School District, how has the ADA shaped your work within the public school system, and where do you still see gaps and factors?
Good morning, I'm Brenda Solitario from Bethlehem Area School District. I am in my mid-50s with long brown hair. I'm a white woman wearing a tan dress. So, good morning. Thank you all for coming out today and hearing about all of the different ways that the ADA has impacted not just schools, but our community and all different facets of our community. In the school district, we are layered with a few different things. We have the IDEA, Individual with Disabilities Education Act, as well as the Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And all three of these come into play when it comes to educating our students. Foremost, the ADA clearly prohibited discrimination in not allowing students to come to school because they have a disability or because their disability is too severe or we can't do that. A personal story, I have an aunt with Down syndrome. She has passed, but she was not allowed to go to school. She turned 6 and it was time to go to school. My grandmother picked up all of her 11 children and moved out of Pennsylvania because they were just going to go to home. And that kind of was a influence in my choosing to go into special education. The ADA also ensures equal access, make sure that we're providing reasonable modifications for students in the classroom and outside of the classroom. So even in sports activities, fine arts activities, whatever it is in the school community that is needed for students to participate in those activities. Communication, making sure that we're providing auxiliary aids and services such as like AAC devices, technology, Braille print, all of the things that would be needed to help that student, and trying new things to help students that haven't been tried before. Removing architectural barriers, of course, goes in any area. Digital accessibility, and promoting inclusion. The promotion of inclusion was when I started in the district back, my first job, I walked up to the elementary school where I was going to be teaching, and there was a list on the door that had and I don't know, was the council, some of you, if you remember, you didn't get a text or an email that said who your teacher was going to be. You had to go to the school and look at the signs on the door. And there was literally signs on the door that said, Mrs. Smith 5th grade, and Mrs. So-and-so 4th grade. And then it said, Mrs. Solitario 345, special education. And I immediately was like, no, this is not okay. So took the sign down and I was like, no, these kids can all be in regular classes for homeroom, the pledge, and do silent reading, no. So we changed it that first day. Immediately it was changed. And some of the teachers were like, this is great, and some of them were like, I don't know about this. So it was a little bit of a training that eventually then, a few years later, led me down to the role I'm in now, which is the central administration and going to all of the different schools and all of the different programs to look for ways to help students be more accessible. And it's twofold. Sometimes it's parents or students coming to us and saying, this is what we need, or this isn't working. And sometimes it's just noticing things. Noticing that the ramp for the students to enter, a ramp is needed, is nowhere near where the bus drops off. And so either we need to change where the bus drops off for all kids, or move the ramp so that they can enter with all the other students. Anything I think about it was I go off script. That's how I work. Okay. I think some others have touched on it as well. It's more than moving the ramp and more than getting the digital versions of print or whatever is needed. It's the mindset, and it's helping to change everyone's mindset to look at these things before they happen and to predict and be proactive about what's going to be needed. Thank you.
Thank you. And you said something really important is, treating all of this, no matter which program we're doing, like even this is an ADA program, but any program, you never treat these resources as an afterthought. It should always be part of that initial planning process. So thank you for naming that. And Robin, in your book, and I'm naming this particular book because I just finished it. I won't say what part I cried at, but there's a part towards the end that I cried at. In your book, Dear Mothman, the reader explores through Noah's eyes what it's like to be a youth that is both trans and autistic. These two characteristics are not always evident to the people around Noah, and there's a theme of visibility around both Noah and Mothman woven throughout. What are your thoughts on how systems or institutional practices can sometimes fail to acknowledge neurodiversity or invisible disabilities? And how does that impact how you write your characters and how you write for your audiences?
Hello? Can you hear? Okay, just click. Okay, just gotta get up on. Hi, I'm Robin. I use it, they, and he, him pronouns. I'm a medium skin tone, non-binary person in my late 20s, I think. And I'm wearing a tank top with a brick that says pride on it. So this is a really big question. I think the first part, I want to build off of what you were talking about, which is that we're shifting mindsets. Our whole society is ableist, deeply, deeply ableist. So I would say that most organizations are always failing to serve most disabled people. And I know that that's like uncomfortable, but it is the reality that we have to like actually grapple with. I think that a world where we shifted our mindset would look very different. This room would look very different in terms of how we organize ourselves, what are considered norms of how you operate in a room. Like, it's okay if people need to get up and walk around. It's okay if people need to make noise. That is like the reality of existing in a space with neurodiversity being centered. So how does it impact how I write characters? I think that I really write from my own perspective. I was a trans autistic kid, and it was a very lonely experience, I think, most of all. I think that a lot of disabled people would say that being young and disabled was sometimes very lonely. And I think that I try to just write an authentic perspective. And I always want to highlight the ways in which other kids can be allies in ways that often push back against systems. A lot of the barriers that Noah encounters come from adults in his life, because that's my experience. And sometimes kids can be more open to diverse perspectives than adults. And so I generally try to showcase how fellow kids can be advocating for their classmates to make a more inclusive environment for you. So, yeah.
Thank you, Robin. Also, Robin's books are all in the back as well, so please check them out with your library cards. Rain, Kimberly Crenshaw, a civil rights activist and educator, coined the term intersectionality to describe the interaction and cumulative effects of multiple forms of discrimination affecting the daily lives of individuals. The term also refers more broadly to understanding how various aspects of our identities, including race, gender, sexuality, class, etc., interact to create unique experiences of privilege or oppression. How do you integrate your own lived experiences and the fullness of your identity into your teaching and your training work around disability justice?
My name is Roin. I use he, they pronouns. I am 33. I am a clear-skinned person, but I'm mixed indigenous. And I have a braid and some shiny makeup on and earrings. Yeah, it's definitely like for me. So just to plant everybody's minds on where I'm coming from. I'm autistic. I have ADHD. I have Ehlers-Danlos, so connective tissue disorder, so physical and mental disabilities, and I'm a mixed indigenous person. I'm an artist. I'm a teacher, but I do have like limitations with that. But so these identities inform how the world interacts with us. So a person that has darker skin than me is going to have a very different experience of disability than somebody with my skin tone, and that's because racism, colorism comes into play. So then these negative experiences are often like amplified because of these intersectional identities, unfortunately. And then often you're navigating spaces. It's like maybe this space is disability affirming, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's a little racist, and that's something that you have to like navigate as a person. With a marginalized identity and an intersectional identity, where it's really difficult to just navigate space and find these affirming spaces that affirm the whole person rather than just like little pieces. Because ultimately, you can't break a person down into little pieces. You have to look at them like a whole person. But as far as like how this goes into my teaching and training, I do try to like root everything into like my own culture with rooting things in indigenous teachings. There's even language about like how you would say ADHD and like Cherokee or something. It's like it translates to a person in their own time. Which I think is really cool because it's even in the way that it's talked about in the language or like the translations, there's like an acceptance of who a person is, and it's not judgmental. It is like seeing you as you are, and there's nothing wrong with that. And traditionally, there would be a place in society for everyone. It would just be like wherever you fit, and for me, like being trans and two-spirit, there's a place traditionally in society as well, being like a mediator, healer, that kind of thing, and thinking about that in the context of like our modern day and like urban society, we can still operate in those sorts of roles, and so I think coming from like a roundabout way, planting like disability justice in that sort of mindset where we come at it at everybody has a place in society together, and it's about figuring out how to make that happen, and kind of like just help people envision that a little bit differently. I think that's been helpful for me. Okay, I think I answered that.
Thanks, Renee. Because I think you touched on this idea. When I hear you speak on this, I hear this theme of this like interconnection and interdependability rather than this hierarchy of folks that are trying to define someone else's existence or what their role is. So thank you for talking about that. Colleen, 80% of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are unemployed. Biddy and Beau's Coffee currently has 18 employees with an IDD. As the franchise owner of Biddy and Beau's, how does the leadership actively employ and support its staff, and how does that approach impact both the team and the community?
So first I'll start off. My name is Colleen Dorsey. I am an late 50s female. Not 60 yet. I am wearing a navy blue tank top and a colorful skirt, and I have short brown hair, and it's good. So the first thing is our 18 employees, it's really hard to impact the overall percentage with that low of a number. But our goal really is to showcase that by hiring people and prioritizing employment for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, that we are showcasing this to other businesses. And we are placing our employees in customer-facing roles, which is very different than the norm. And I'll talk about that a little bit in the second question. But really, from the get-go, our goal was to create an environment that they can be successful, our employees can be successful. So if you've ever been to our coffee shop, you might notice that the bar is ADA height, that our pathways are larger than maybe some other coffee shops. Our equipment is set up to be super automatic, which is kind of cool. Our recipes are designed to be very intentional in terms of easy to understand. The equipment that they use to measure, stir, and everything like that is intentional. Our point of sale system is set up with categories, and very similar to an iPad, a tool that many of our employees have learned to utilize throughout their education. So it becomes very easy for them to work on a daily basis. We are also very careful to look at the strengths and the abilities of all of our employees. And we have 3 job positions at our shop, and we like to make sure that we are matching the right person with the right position. So if we have an employee who is autistic and might not want to be that customer-facing, greeter, but they're very good at doing the same thing over and over and over again, then being a barista or a drink maker is an awesome position for them. We also want to make sure that our employees who have often been kept in the background are seen. And by being seen, it creates an environment in our shop where others feel welcome as well. We like to look at our slogans. So if you come in our shop and you see some of our merch, our slogans: radically inclusive, changing the way people see other people, not broken, one of the early ones, one of my favorites, and then leave your doubt at the door, which is actually my favorite, because when you enter our shop, don't think about what you think you're coming into, but recognize what it is. And I think that's important. But really shifting the perceptions of how people think about people in the workforce that have IDD is a very big goal of ours. And I'd like to see other employers come in, really see what's possible, and then take that message back to their workplaces, because once we do that, then maybe that percentage will start to shrink. And that's what really the goal is.
Wonderful. So if you know some organizations that could learn from Colleen and her employees, please touch base with her after the program. And Colleen, thank you for demonstrating what radical welcome looks like. I think a lot of times we tell people that they're welcome, but we don't necessarily have a setting that actually allows them to really kind of be vulnerable and be welcome in that space. So thank you for setting that standard and modeling that for us. And Michael, we're so happy you're here. Can you tell us about your work? You've created art to be enjoyed by everyone, but it's also meant for visually disabled people to experience through touch, and you'll see that as you exit out today. You can see Michael's artwork up there. How does your art reflect your experiences as a visually disabled person navigating the world?
My name is Michael Freeman. I'm African American. I am 52 years old. Yes. So, and I am wearing a white top, zippers, tan pants, brown shoes, with white around the bottom, the edge of them, black curls here like an afro. And to that question, there's several different things, so I'm going to kind of keep it in time. First of all, with that, I was disabled before I did art. I was born with an impairment. It's called tunnel vision. So to give you an idea of what my vision is like, think about a horse that they put blinders on and they're walking and they're trying to keep that horse focused from not seeing anything on the side so it wouldn't flop or do anything else. So I see very well straight. I have no peripheral vision on the side, so that's why I don't drive, thank God. But I know my wife back there is happy. But as for that question is, when I was born in 1950, so think about there how the medical field was back then. You can only imagine. They did not understand what to do with the person that was born with a disability, a vision impairment, any type of ADA or type of disability, right? So if they couldn't understand it, they, like Brenda says, they put you all in a special ed class, right? They couldn't understand you. I had a speech impediment, went to speech classes, cognitive classes, anything that you think of for them trying to figure out what was wrong with you. And honestly, yes, I had, like Brenda said, I had stipulations or things that I couldn't do right away or quickly, but once I got it, I got it. So I was no different. So fast forward about the years, dealing with teachers and classes, it was very difficult for me. So I had no outlet to do anything. So of course the mental part played a part into it. Depression, thinking about committing suicide, tried to attempt it once. So as I got older and got fast forward again up to this point, started going to therapy. The therapist recommended doing artwork, maybe to help me out. So I started doing that. My wife I met, my daughter, they were always doing something DIY and stuff, so I didn't want to be left behind. So I started painting, and it looked horrible. I mean, horrible. But as I started doing it and understanding it and tapping into the mental part of it and the relaxation of it and not thinking about my disability at all and being able to step back and see now I'm starting to progress, starting to do more things. And then I'm like, okay, so if I'm doing better in here, I'm helping myself, how can I help others? And everybody gets into art, everybody loves some type of art. Well, art was always made for people that had vision to see. We never took the ADA or the disability people in mind that loved art. So in my mind, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start making art for those with visual impairments that can see, experience, touch artwork. And that's when I started using things with beads, textile, glow-in-the-dark paint, anything that can get their attention so they can feel it, to understand that, hey, you can create art, you can feel art, and create your own art in your own way.
And you create that welcome, right, through your artwork.
At least I hope I did you proud.
I mean, we're used to going to museums where you're not allowed to touch anything, right? But for
Yes,
you, please
yes.
touch, please experience it.
And that's the stigma I want to break, especially in not just art galleries, right? Restaurants, schools, education. Break that stigma that things don't have to be a certain way. You don't have to follow certain rules. What the student has to be able to bring, you have to be open and considerate that they are bringing something positive that maybe another student can't, right? Or can be playing basketball or doing something artistic. So that's what I want to break as well.
Thank you. We're going to turn our attention back up to Shane and Hannah. Shane, in your book, Strangers Think My Girlfriend Is My Nurse, you talk about the ADA. You say, since the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990, it is basically illegal to discriminate against people with disabilities. But I think many people have actually turned a blind eye to immense societal boundaries and injustices that still exist for me and my disability brothers and sisters. So often when I mention that I can't access areas of my college because of the steps, or I can't afford caregivers, or that flying is dangerous for me, I'm met with the confused response of, but doesn't the ADA make that illegal? Sometimes the answer is yes, and sometimes it's no, but almost every time the answer is, it doesn't really matter, it's still happening. How do these gaps between what people think the ADA does and what it actually looks like in practice inspire you to provide assistive devices and other supports through Laughing at My Nightmare? And how might Laughing at My Nightmare as an organization be evolving today?
Thank you. Yeah, so similar to when I talked about systemic inaccessibility issues, and people are shocked to learn about it. Similar to that, when Laughing at My Nightmare talks about the need for making adaptive equipment and all everything more easily available. People are met with that same type of confusion versus assumption that disabled people are provided for, and that all they need to do is ask them, go get from whatever device they need, and that's so wildly not the case. From barriers with insurance to barriers with government systems, there are a million reasons why a disabled person might have a hard time getting access to devices that they might need to live their best life. And I've always been very fortunate to have a great support network and thought to get me the items I need, but so many people don't have that. And that's all I think might exist to be there when people don't understand if they need a elevator in their home, if they need an education device that was denied to them by the insurance company that needed medically unnecessarily. We're about allowing people to thrive, whereas insurance is thinking only about the downside and really take that like the need for organizations like Laughing at My Nightmare say that everyone can have dialects that they like. Thank you.
Great, thank you for providing those services. We also have Sarah Burcaw who's here with us. She's going to give some comments before our flag raising. And there's also Laughing at My Nightmare pamphlets in the back. So if you want to find out more about the organization, please pick them up on your way out. Thank you, Shane. Hannah, and the book, that is the brand new book out in the back, you and Shane recently released, which is Interabled, True Stories About Love and Disability. The book features stories of several interabled couples. You both have the YouTube and TikTok channel, Squirming Gross, which highlights your day-to-day life, and also sometimes pokes fun at the assumptions people make about both of you. Can you share some resources, additional resources, for people that are learning about interabled relationships?
Yes, so our focus is these stories because following on our channel, we get comments from people assuming that we are the only integrated couple in the world, and we're extremely unique, so we're the first ever, so or why like so many other couples. But additional resources, I think one of the best ways of learning more about interabled couples and just seeing how many there are out there is through social media. A lot of other couples are also sharing their lives online these days. I'd say a couple of our favorites are one of our best friends, Beau and Charisma, have a channel where they share their lives very similarly to us. We also have our friends Amanda and Michael. Amanda has muscular dystrophy and Michael's a caregiver and husband. So there's so many couples out there and disabled people in general who are on social media sharing their stories, and it's a very easy way to learn so much from recently.
Thank you, Hannah, so much. And thank you for putting your lives out there. Sometimes I think a lot of us feel a certain way, especially on social media, we want to portray things a certain way, but you and Shane just have this way about you where it's like, this is who we are, and it just allows people to really get to know you and get to know what an interabled relationship looks like. So thank you for modeling that for us and letting the world into your personal lives, which can probably be hard sometimes. So thank you so much for that.
Good.
Ashley, how do you approach disability advocacy that centers both independence, but also balancing the fullness of a person's identity, like we heard with Roin and Michael, and what might that entail?
So we are a Center for Independent Living, so we empower people to be independent. And independence looks different for everybody. So we just really try to take into consideration their individual circumstances and goals. We recognize that people are more than just their disability and honor them as a full person, including their race, ethnicity, gender, culture, all these other factors. We take time to listen to our consumers and respect where they are in life, separate from and or including their disability. We are consumer controlled, so all of the decisions that are made are driven from the individual. We walk alongside of them and encourage them to make those choices. I think some people celebrate their identity as a disabled person and want to be referred to, for example, as autistic rather than a person with autism. We still use the person first phrasing, which would be a person with autism. However, we recognize that if an individual prefers to be referred to as in a different way, we will absolutely do that. Other people see the disability as just a small part of themselves and don't acknowledge it at all. So we try to take the time to really get a feel for what a person needs from us, where they are in their journey, and how we can best support them. The majority of our staff and board are people with disabilities, so if you walk into our office and meet with one of our staff members, you may well be meeting with a person with the same disability as you or different disability. And we really just make sure that people with disabilities have a very loud voice in the room. And we have this slogan in mind often that says, "Nothing about us without us." So I think that really sums up our whole vision and mission.
Thank you so much. And we're going to come back to that idea of nothing about us without us, right, in a little bit. Brenda, what role does inclusive education play in shifting societal attitudes about disability? I know you said a little bit before that in your first question, but what are some of the challenges and joys of inclusive education?
Yes, inclusive education really does break down the barriers and helps students to get to know each other as they are, for their strengths and for what they are able to do. When we look at having students in classrooms, we do trainings with teachers on presuming competence and making sure that they understand the child that's going to be coming into their classroom and everything about them so that they can be prepared for them. But we also work with partners. In particular, this year, Lehigh University came in and worked with students. They worked with kindergarten, first grade, and second grade students on how to be more inclusive of students with autism. It was wonderful because the students didn't actually realize that they had students in their classroom with autism. But so that was eye-opening for the adults as well, and that happens quite often too. But it did help when they saw that child just walking by themselves in the playground and then just to go and walk with them. And they didn't necessarily have to play tag or kind of, go on the side of the board. They just a walking partner to be with them. So we saw things like that. The younger kids are really good at it. As it gets older, middle school can be a little bit, it's not always cool, but we're working on it. We're continuing to move forward and break down those barriers. Because when they get to the high school, we're preparing them for adulthood. These are individuals in our community who we are all going to be working with, together, for, and about. So it's important that the students all know how to interact with each other and know what they bring to the table. We have several programs that start in high schools and then go into the community for our students. It's a site training and living program. But even something like our coffee shops at Freedom and Liberty, where we have our students who have disabilities working in the coffee shop and the other students coming in and placing the orders and taking things out to to their classrooms. That has been a huge, just partnering of people seeing the benefit of having students be part of their community and part of their school community. And then those skills that they're learning in that coffee shop then transfer out to our other sites than they. So more bonuses than not, and we work through the dots.
And I love what you said about presuming confidence and how even some of the adults didn't know. Like sometimes we have these ideas of what disability looks like. This idea that someone looks autistic or someone looks disabled. And so thank you for naming that. And I also want to highlight, I know Jace's going to give comments a little bit later, but in your programs, you're going to find a link next to Jace Pooley, his face on his beautiful face on the program, and his article is all about presuming confidence. And so please check out that article when you get home. It's incredible. So thank you for naming that. Robin, one of the mottos which resonates with a lot of people, which Ashley had mentioned before, is nothing about us without us. How does your work center and explore the intersections of queerness and disability in creative and activist spaces, including mutual aid and nonprofit work?
So I think that a lot of times in disability spaces, we see people speaking for us, and I think it's because people think that we can't communicate our needs and our wants. I've been invited to a lot of different disability-focused commission or board in which the majority of the people are not disabled, and that's deeply, deeply troubling. We are not able to communicate our own wants and needs, and I think I would really want to see a greater shift towards accepting that disabled people have a wide range of thoughts and experiences, but nothing about us without us means that we need to be leading the conversations around disability. And then connecting that to queerness, I mean, queer disabled activists have been part of disability rights since its inception. Everything from people who are doing HIV advocacy work, which is a disability intersection, to really prolific writers on disability justice, like Kelly Clare, who wrote Exile and Pride, which is a lot about the early disability rights movements and mad rights in the United States. And then I think that how we use that in our work, and I'm speaking also a little bit to Roin too, but we are the communities that we serve. And that's a really big difference between a mutual aid collective and most organizations. So we have the same life struggles that house people who are coming to us seeking support have. And when you build community that has those shared understandings, it's really impactful. It shifts us away from a charity mindset in which disabled people are viewed as charity causes or the needy or something like that. We have so many tools. And I do want to point to some of the history of the ADA because it was a highly, fought battle. Disabled people put their physical bodies on the line in order to get the ADA passed. And I do think it's just a starting point, but I think it's important to recognize disabled people made the ADA happen, physically sitting in different kinds of electorates' houses, not houses, they're, election houses, Senate, Congress, crawling up the steps, out of their wheelchairs, whatever other kind of accessibility devices. So people put their bodies on the line for that, and that was disabled people who did that for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's something to be said about the history that we know and that's often talked about, and then the history that sometimes in our own identities we have to go looking for it because it's not always centered in education, or sometimes you have to go to post-secondary education, college to even get to know your own history. So thank you, Robin, for sharing. And Roin, I know Robin touched on a little bit about this, but what shifts do you hope to see in how queer and disabled communities are represented in advocacy spaces? And how might Queer and Trans Lehigh Valley model that and stand out as an organization among others?
I think having the community that is being served at the center of whatever advocacy you're doing is, you just will not be as effective if you don't include the community that you're serving. Because there's going to be things that you can't think of from your perspective because it's not your lived experience, and that's just a blanket fact. Even if you have loved ones that have that lived experience, if you don't have that, then you can't do that. And I think
ultimately like being only beholden to your community. So Queer and Trans Lehigh Valley is a mutual aid group. So we're not a 501c3, like there's no government recognition. We're just a group of people who do good things for our community, and ultimately the direction of the organization is led by the community, and we're accountable to our community only. So there's no funders or anything like that. So it's unique in that it helps us move quickly in ways that are needed. So some of the services that we offer are like direct fundraising, so we don't touch any of the money, it goes straight to the people. We have a pantry of items that we give to people, so like hygiene, laundry detergent, makeup, whatever. We do skill sharing. So one that we recently did was like how to access healthcare if you don't have insurance. So like things like that, like whatever the needs of our community, we try to like meet it, whether it's like from sharing information or like literal physical things like money or other resources. And often we end up being a little bit caseworkery, like unofficially, because ultimately we don't want anybody to be abandoned, which I feel like some more like corporate or like, you can think like traditional kind of structures, often people that might be seen as like a problem, and I'm using these words because like it's something that has been said about folks, you know, people end up getting abandoned, but there's like, as far as Queer and Trans Lehigh Valley, we don't abandon people, in that if there's harm or anything like that, we have accountability processes, but we still try to get them connected with like resources and stuff like that, which I think is very different than a lot of places who will be like, you are shunned, which is not helpful. It's not helpful to anybody. So we definitely kind of have more of like a village model, I think, which I think is something beautiful that can be replicated, that is outside of this like governmental or NGO structure, and you don't need permission to do that.
Thank you so much. And I think that oftentimes it's probably the question you get asked the most, like, oh, what's your 501c3?
Yeah.
Or how can we, and that can be really challenging, right? Because we're so used to these more traditional, like very role-based models. But you really are modeling what it looks like when the community comes together to support each other with like nothing else to gain but seeing those folks supported, seeing your own community supported. So thank you. And Colleen, oftentimes workplaces do not make changes to accessibility practices unless it becomes something that affects everyone. We saw this during COVID, right, with work from home. Before, a lot of people couldn't work from home. All of a sudden, the pandemic happens, and now all of a sudden, everyone can work from home, right? Sometimes these accessibility practices are viewed as too cumbersome or perhaps ironically unfair to able-bodied people. What are common misconceptions about accessibility or inclusion efforts in the workplace, and how do you challenge some of those perceptions?
I'm going to start off by saying, in our coffee shop, so we not only employ people who have intellectual and developmental disabilities, but also neurotypical teammates. And watching our staff work side by side, I think in and of itself breaks down some of those barriers and misconceptions, because our coffee shop is set up for everybody to be successful, not just those who have disabilities, and not just those who do not, right? So really we try to set it up so that everybody can be successful. But you know, some of the misconceptions in terms of the business world in general are that hiring people with an intellectual developmental disability might be difficult. It might be time consuming, it might be costly. And what we're finding is that with the right training and supports, we have a very consistent, loyal staff. And if you walk down Main Street and you see staff turnover ratios that are so excessive, and you come into our coffee shop, and I guarantee every one of our employees will tell you how long they've worked at Benny and Beau's Coffee. Most will say, I've been here since the beginning. I'm one of the OGs. I've been here 3.5 years. Everyone knows how long they've worked at Benny and Beau's Coffee. but I think that that's a testament to showing that it's not something that is harmful for employers, right? Another thing is sometimes people think that we need to be a program. We need to be, like you said, a charity or a not-for-profit. We are a for-profit business, and that is extremely important to really showcase to other for-profit businesses that having people with IED on your staff does not take away from what might be the goal that you have in terms of business performance, let's say. When you look at our having one misconception is that customers might feel different about coming into our shop, or they might feel uncomfortable with interacting with our staff. That's just not happening, right? People come in, most times people do not even know that the person who is taking their order has autism, or Down syndrome is a little bit more recognizable, but even then, they may not recognize the disability first, and I think that's hugely important, that they're just seeing a person working and doing their job well. And then, lastly, inclusion is part of our daily operation. That's what we do. And to have that just not be an afterthought, but as something that is inherent within your organization, I think is extremely important.
Thank you so much. And Michael, you have a number of skill sets, but your art therapy classes are a way for you to specifically address an individual's mental health, as you talked about in your previous question. In your experience, what mental health challenges are often overlooked within the disabled community in particular, and how does your work address them?
Yeah, so like you said, there's many different ways that mental health challenges disability, right? And listening to what Robin, Roin, and Brenda and everybody has spoken on, I think the main point that we miss as individuals, whether you have a disability or you don't. And to be honest, I was raised by my mom. Everybody has a disability, whether it's seen, mental, physical, or not. We all have a disability. We all need glasses. We all need something to help us to get through the day. So we are all disabled first. I think as far as that, it plays a lot, right? Whether your race, your culture, your background, right? Mental health is there regardless. And I think the lack of empathy towards those that have disability, I see it constantly. So what I want to do is take my artwork into art therapy classes to help those, whether they have disabilities or not, to understand that you can find something in this stage of life that we are living to help you get through day-to-day activities. So art therapy is a way where you can use art, the different colors, the meaning of the colors, to understand what you're going through with your disability and to help you understand I'm different, but I'm getting through. I'm not different. I'm just going through challenging moments in life. And I need somebody to understand that. So I'm trying to be that bridge to understand what you're going through and using art therapy to help you yourself go through what you need to go through in life.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
I really want to encourage people to check out Michael's, check out Michael's artwork, check out everything he offers the community. I'm going to combine, we're going to do like a popcorn question. I'm going to combine both questions together, if that's okay, because we do want to give a couple minutes for our audience to be able to ask you some questions. So basically, we are seeing right now that Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, all of that is really being threatened. We know that a lot of programs and organizations are at risk of being defunded or restricted. often under the guise of neutral policies or anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion sentiments. How do you respond to claims that these efforts are no longer necessary or not really being threatened, especially in relation to disability inclusion? And anyone can answer.
Can always talk. Well, I think that it's just an assertion that people who need help don't have it. Like that's what, if you're saying, if anyone is saying like that this would impact anyone, it's just a position that like we're full on into a eugenics project, like that's saying like that people's lives are valuable. And the impact that those cuts will have is like, it's really hard to like talk about, but like people will die. Like, and people do die without care. I've seen stories of people who maybe aren't on any kind of health insurance, lose access to things like insulin, things like daily medications. The impact is that we will lose parts of our community. And it's a really heavy fact, but like, I don't want us to like tiptoe around issues. Like, this is like, access to healthcare for disabled people is like life or death.
And I think too, like when you couple that with intersectionality, so like queer and trans identities, for queer and trans people in particular, 1 in 4 people I think identify as disabled, and then 1 in 3 are neurodivergent. Maybe it's reversed, but it's a lot. You know, that's significant. So this is also a queer and trans issue, an LGBTQ plus issue, and as you might imagine, if you have any other intersectionality that has that probability of increased negative health outcomes, it's worse, you know. So this is mostly going to impact our most vulnerable community members, and the government will not save us ultimately. And so if that is the case, which it seems to be, it's our job to take care of each other, because we can't, because you know, many hands make light work. There have been programs historically where communities have come together to take care of each other, and that's what needs to happen if we lose these governmental resources. Because there are options, you know, with like pooling money for like healthcare resources. It is like cost prohibitive, but there's like there's strategies, you know. So we can learn from the history of our country and organizations that have been around in the past, and they're still here, whether it's from the AIDS crisis or BLM or even a lot of the programs that Black Panthers did. There's programs out there that we can like look to and then adapt them to like our modern society. Not that it wasn't modern then, but you know, it's been a bit. It's been a moment. But ultimately, we do actually have the ability to take care of each other if we just stop being afraid of each other, for one, and then just give of ourselves. Yep.
I think in general, anybody who says that it doesn't have an impact doesn't do this work, right? And doesn't understand. From an independent living standpoint, a lot of programs that fall sort of under this Medicaid umbrella, if you will, really support someone to gain the skills that they need to live independently, to work independently. And so, you know, there's this stereotype still that people with disabilities, quote, live off the system. I hate even saying those words out loud. And the understanding is not there that the programs exist so that doesn't happen, right? So we need to make sure that we are getting that point across and really fueling that part of the conversation. If there's no access to something like a personal care attendant, the person can't go to work, and that's the reality. Same with assistive technology. There goes the person's dignity, right? And mental health goes right along with that. So it's just such a snowball effect, and I think, you know, staying as positive as humanly possible is important, and then just breaking it down one piece at a time to somebody who doesn't necessarily believe what's happening, right? Real, small, concrete pieces.
Thank you. I also want to turn it back to Shane and Hannah if they have anything they want to say. I know, Shane, you actually talk about this a little bit in your book about your book sales and how that might affect, you know, you actually being able to take advantage of resources too. So can you say a little bit about that too?
Yeah, I would just say that people are saying that like they still use strict art didn't have real effects. We're seeing it as we just the number of people that are applying to us because they want some service where the care system within their items so they can what and if I had never returned, they was finding else from knowledge should be able to use your first. Yeah, and we have to spend people again. Every thousand people play with us, I say, I help the chair stuff must be and you know, check the good thing for life. And so that's clear, and there are very good applications for these cuts. And also check stuff. And then like the run we have to get the airport. So that you summarize it like just all the panelists for giving their knowledge, all of the information, and for prioritizing the study notes. Lisa says that. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for setting up in this morning and have a good flight, a good safe flight.
I should
Good to see you. We have 2 minutes if there are any questions from our audience. Otherwise, you can always catch up with folks after the flag raising. Is there anyone that wanted to ask a question here? Yes.
Hi. So, in response to the Medicare question, which is that, you know, I think everyone is very aware that we are in dire times in terms of things being going in a not great direction for disability accessibility. But I feel like that could sometimes eclipse the successes and positive things that may be going on a small level. So is there anything that is giving you optimism in the disability access space, maybe with your specific program or in general right now? Like what is it that is going, I hate to say going well, but what is giving you optimism right now?
Okay, not real super optimistic. However, in the school age world, if a child, for instance, needs a home health aide to be with them at school because of some medical needs, and they are no longer able to have that funded through their insurance or whatever funding source they're using, because Bethlehem School District does invite all of the agencies to come into the school with the students, whether it's for behavioral support or health support or whatever. The school district is considered the payer of last resort. So it means that that child is still protected. What's not protected is our property taxes. So that money still comes from somewhere, but at least the child who needs the service is still going to get the service. Same thing with like an AAC device. We often work with families to get that AAC device that the child can then have homeschool and community. So the child owns the device if it goes through the insurance. If it goes through the school district and we pay for the device, they only have it 6.5 hours a day. And it's not as effective because they don't become as fluent using it across settings. So the optimism is just really the school age population, you know, we're there, we still have to be fiscally responsible. We can't just go handing things out left and right, like, oh, the school district can pay for that. We have to do studies and collect data to assure that it's necessary, but there is that little layer of protection there.
I think from like our standpoint, I have seen a lot more people that step up, which is hopeful, and I think that you can't do this kind of work without hope. Because if there's no hope, why would you do it? You know? So But I mean, for us, we got somebody a car. That's a win. Free car, you know. And I think that we're able to, you know, get people funds or things and make it easier, or even just like connect people with community, which, you know, like loneliness is a thing that's a problem. So I think even if we're meeting like an individual's needs or like partially meeting that gives me hope personally. And just seeing how many people are like starting to come into activist spaces to like do the work, because it makes it a heck of a lot easier on me personally, but then also like, you know, the groups in general, I think.
I think that's a great segue to Roin on Payrow Plaza. I'm sure there are more questions. I really encourage you to connect with our folks on the panel afterwards. We're so grateful for all of you sharing your time with us today on a Saturday morning. Thank you so much. We literally could not have done this without you. And it's really meaningful that you're all here for the very first city-led Disability Pride event. Like, this is a core memory for us as a city, so thank you so much. But I also want to turn your attention, it is on the table back there by the bathrooms. Since this is the city's first Disability Pride event, we recognize that we always have room for improvement. And we also recognize that this is an annual celebration, but the work, as you've all talked about, continues 365 days a year, right? So we want to hear from you on how we should proceed with this work and allow you to contact our office with ideas. There are feedback forms in the back that you can access. There's pens back there. There's a QR code for, I think the digital feedback form is a little bit easier. You don't have to put your name on the print form if you're uncomfortable with that. We just want to hear from you. If you do want to keep in touch with us, please put your information at the end of that form on the other side. And lastly, before we transition out the front doors of the library to the Disability Pride flag raising, which will be straight across the plaza, you can see the doors for City Hall there. We're going to do all of our comments there, and there's a lot of music. I don't know if you noticed, there's a lot of music festival equipment out there. So we're going to have our comments there, and then we will have our community raise the flag. But before we do that, I want to welcome Sarah Burcaw, the co-founder of Laughing at My Nightmare, here to provide some closing comments for this portion of the program.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, I am Sarah Burcaw. I am a white woman in my late 30s. I have blonde hair, a white shirt, and green pants on. I am a very proud Bethlehem native, and I am the vice president co-founder of Laughing at My Nightmare, and the very proud cousin of Shane Burcaw. Now, growing up alongside Shane, I witnessed firsthand what it means to navigate a world not built with disabled people in mind. And when I say navigating a world not built for him, I am not referring to someone heroically overcoming their disability. I am talking about Shane visiting colleges with inaccessible disability offices. I am talking about the astronomical cost of adaptive vehicles and in-home lifts that make basic independence possible. And today, we celebrate the 35th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a landmark that did way more than require curb cuts and ramps. Today, though, we honor the advocates, the lawmakers, and more importantly, the disabled people who fought and continue to fight to make that vision real. And the ADA was a promise that disabled people deserve the same rights, the same dignity, and the same opportunities as anyone else. But as we've heard, that promise remains unfulfilled. Access is still uneven. Discrimination is still very real. And too many people in the disability community are still waiting for equipment, higher education, jobs, or even just a seat at the table. And at Laughing at My Nightmare, we witness this every day, which is why we have a mission to fight ableism by providing free adaptive equipment, college scholarships, and emergency grants when public systems fall short. And we are a very small fish in a very big pond, but we are also very proud to be part of a local network and stand alongside organizations like LV-SIL, Biddy and Beau's, the ARC of Lehigh and Northampton counties, Queer and Trans Lehigh Valley, VIA of Lehigh Valley, and so many others who are building a more inclusive Lehigh Valley every day. So as we celebrate this milestone, let's also recommit ourselves. Let's push for policies and practices that go beyond compliance, that truly foster inclusion, belonging, and opportunity. Let's continue to break down not just physical barriers, but attitudinal and systematic ones too, by listening to disabled voices. Speaking up when we see injustice, making spaces more accessible, and having everyday conversations that challenge stereotypes. Advocacy doesn't just have to start in Washington, D.C. It can start at your kitchen table. It can start in your classroom. It can start in your workplace. It can even start on your social feed. Let's challenge ableism. Let's elevate disabled voices. Let's build a world where disability isn't an afterthought, but a central part of the conversation, because 35 years from now, we all want to say we didn't just mark this anniversary. We moved this movement forward. So thank you to the City of Bethlehem for making today possible, and thank you everyone for being here. And here's to continuing this very important work together. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah. We're now going to proceed outside for our flag raising. You do, on your way out, if you want to grab a few resources in the back from our partners, please do. But again, we'll be going straight across to the doors of City Hall right there, and then we'll be flag together. Thanks for joining.
A lot of awards and honors that have been given to her for her work in making the Lehigh Valley age-friendly. So to talk more about that, I'm going to pass it over to Carmen Bell.
Thanks, Janine. It's my honor and my pleasure to be here. I've been working with the United Way for almost 8 years. And when I started there, we envisioned a community where everyone had an opportunity to age successfully and everyone had an opportunity to thrive. And so the Age Friendly Initiative is not just about people growing older, it's about making space for everyone to be included and welcomed and respected in our community. And so we're incredibly pleased to be a part of this celebration. It's fascinating to me that the ADA law was only passed 35 years ago. And that's just remarkable to me that it took us so long to get to that place. But I'm very happy that we're there. I'm very happy that we have a community that understands we have the power to build the kind of community that we want to live in, and that we want to be that place that is welcoming and inclusive, regardless of socioeconomic status, ethnicity, ability, or any other wide range of characteristics. So I'm just glad to be a part of this celebration, and I'm glad that the City of Bethlehem welcomed us in. Thanks so much, Janine.
Next, I want to welcome Elise Schaefer from Lehigh University Art Galleries. When I tell you how magnificent Elise is, I'm going off script here. I made a 1-hour meeting to meet with LUAG, and instead I think it turned into like 2.5 hours. And Elise has taught me so much about doing this work on the city level. And so just to tell you a little bit about her, she is a Pennsylvania-based creative and passionate advocate for arts and disability justice. She currently serves as the coordinator of museum experience and accessibility at Lehigh University Art Galleries. And previously she has worked as the access coordinator for Touchstone Theater and the program coordinator for the Lehigh Valley Art Council's Arts and Access Always program. Her work in these roles encompasses a range of activities, including event access coordination, leading professional development workshops, museum education, audio description, and tactile tours. In 2024, Elise was awarded the LEAD Award for Emerging Leadership by the Kennedy Center for Work in Cultural Arts and Accessibility. Welcome, Elise.
Hi, everybody. Oh, hello. I can't imagine I'll say anything too different than what you've already heard today. But I want to thank you all for being here, and a huge thank you to Janine for all your work on this event. My name is Elise. I'm the coordinator of Museum Experience and Access at Lehigh University Art Galleries. I am also a person living with a disability in the city of Bethlehem. Growing up, I watched closely as family members navigated the complicated world as disabled people. From medical and legal services to social challenges and isolation, I saw people I loved continuously mistreated and abandoned by a society and a government that did not support them the way they should. Then, in my early 20s, I faced a diagnosis. And firsthand, I experienced that same world in a way I never thought I'd have to. I say this not for you to pity or for you to feel inspired by my long journey to where I am now, but as a reminder for you to understand. Understand that 1 in 4 people in America have a disability, that disabled people are the largest growing minority and the only marginalized group that any person can become part of at any time. I can stand here and tell you about all the difficulties and challenges our community faces, although I'm sure many of you understand all too well, and they told me only to talk for 2 to 5 minutes. But living with a disability, while potentially more complicated or frustrating in many ways, is a life still filled with joy. That being a person with a disability or a diagnosis is not something we have to fear or discriminate against. I'm so proud of my community and the work that disabled people consistently do to care and show up for each other and themselves every day. I'm proud to live in a city where events like this can happen, coming together to celebrate not only legislation that supports our rights, care, and freedom, but celebrate each other and the work we do to advocate for ourselves and one another. We are by no means where we should be when it comes to accessibility and inclusion, but gatherings like these are an incredible opportunity for us to connect and grow. In the words of author and disability advocate Alice Wong, the story of disabled success has never been a story about one solitary disabled person overcoming limitations, despite the fact that that's the narrative we so often read in the media. The narrative trajectory of a disabled person's life is necessarily webbed. We are often only as strong as our friends and our family make us, only as strong as our community, only as strong as the resources and privileges we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. And now I want to welcome up Jace Pooley. Jace, you will find in the program I keep saying this, please read the article, it's so good. Jace Pooley is 17 years old and really excited to be a part of SEEN. Jace loves hiking and has finished 1,383 miles of the Appalachian Trail. He is currently working towards his associate's degree in psychology at Northampton Community College and can't wait to study at Drexel in their online program. Be sure to check out his article in Pediatrics, which is in your program. Jace, welcome and thank you for being a part of our program today.
So honored to get to share some thoughts with you at this incredible event. My name is Jace Pooley, and I'm a non-speaker. Of all the really important things I could stress, I'm going to have you leave here with 3 assignments. First, take a minute to check out Communication for All, the nonprofit organization founded and run by my idol, Elizabeth Bonker. She's leading the advocacy efforts working to make our right to communicate, using whatever method we want, a reality. Second, please remember that the inability to speak is not the same thing as an inability to understand. I'm a smart guy even though I don't talk. And third, most of all, work to meet those of us with differences where we are. My brain and body work in ways yours don't, but I have a feeling that there's room in Bethlehem for both of us just as we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jace. So the original Disability Pride flag was created in 2019 by writer Anne Magel, who has cerebral palsy. She created it when she attended an event commemorating the 20th anniversary of the ADA in the basement of an independent living center, instead of out in public. She designed the first flag, which was actually with bright colored zigzags on it, but when viewed on a device, it prompted symptoms in people with visual disabilities. So after this input from the community, it was updated in 2021. So the flag you're going to see today is both muted and reordered to help those with red-green color blindness see it better. Each color of the stripes have meaning. So you're going to see red, which stands for physical disabilities, gold for neurodiversity, white for invisible disabilities and disabilities that haven't yet been diagnosed, blue for emotional and psychiatric disabilities, including mental illness, anxiety, and depression, and green for sensory disabilities, including deafness, blindness, lack of smell, lack of taste, audio processing disorders, and all other sensory disabilities. The faded black background you'll see represents mourning for victims of ableist violence and discrimination, and the diagonal design signifies cutting through barriers that separate the disabled community from society. So thank you everyone who made comments today. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you for all that have shown up. I know we have some friends from Biddy and Beau's with us today. And so I wanted to invite them to raise the flag with us, and that will culminate the end of our program, but not the end of our work. Thank you so much for being with us.